Hello and welcome to Management 420, Management Research for Decision Making. I'm your instructor, Seth Spain. You can reach me by email at seth.spain@concordia.ca. My office is currently in an undisclosed location. That means that office hours will be remote. So those will mostly be by appointment. On typical weeks, I should be available on Wednesdays and Fridays, most preferentially. But just email me, and that's probably going to be the best way to get a hold of me. In fact, I should just get rid of the telephone number because I'm not going to be checking that phone anytime soon. So email me. I'm also going to give you in words my Gmail address, which is pretty much always open. So S as in Sam, M as in Michael, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, A as in Adam, I as in Irene, N as in Nicole. All right, at gmail.com. That's another way of getting a hold of me. It probably, honestly, if you want to get a hold of me in a hurry, that's the better way. So the first question that we need to face in this class is why do management research? What's it for? And the main reason is that, well, my approach is I am a researcher, right? So for one thing, it's just interesting. For me, I think it is interesting to find out what goes on in people's heads and lives at work. But in general, like for more practically minded people, our research matters to practicing managers. It can be helpful to find things out, and sometimes you can take like existing management research off the shelf and start using it in your office. And in general, scientific research can change the way we do business. So, for instance, probably this is most obvious in places that are kind of adjacent to management in something like human factors or what's sometimes called cognitive ergonomics. For instance, like there's plenty of research at this point that shows that while digital readouts are more precise in the case of altimeters, so like what your and other sorts of flight instruments, an analog presentation is preferable because, for instance, whereas like a digital readout might tell you are in fact cruising at 30,000 feet or whatever, and so you might know it very precisely. The altimeter, an analog one, shows people in a way that maps to the way we think about height, how far off the ground you are. Same sort of thing applies with the orientation and digital. Like it could tell you like what your pitch or yaw was, very precisely, but actually seeing an image of the plane's wings and what their tilt is helps people to understand things. So, and again, that's just an example there. Probably closer to home in an office setting is there's a story about Vox Media in New York. There's a particular conference room that, because of the way the doors are set up, everybody always tries to pull the doors open when in fact they're pushed. So people keep walking into those doors and being like expecting them to open inwards, they actually pull, and so people smack into it. And it happens to people who even are familiar with the doors. So one thing there is the design of a door. Like for instance, most people are going to read like if it is a vertical handle, you should pull. If it's a horizontal handle, you should push a door. That's pretty standard. So that's the sort of thing where researching how people perceive the world and how they think about it can really help us to maybe design better workspaces. The same sort of thing is going to apply in closer to home when we learn about what factors you can have control over that make teams better functioning or worse functioning, how you can help people to be motivated and those sorts of things. So there are a number of domains. In fact, management research in general is full of advice for practicing managers, or at least tries to be. In general, every week the slides are going to have learning outcomes in place. So we're going to explain the relevance of management research to practitioners, make sense of technical research reports, conduct a research project and write a user-friendly technical report, critically evaluate and assess the validity of reports of management research, develop your curiosity, creativity, and team skills, increase your confidence in using both quantitative and, to a much lesser extent, qualitative analyses. How Here's a question that apparently does come up according to some people. I have taken research methods in SageUp. Why am I doing it again? Well, number one, you haven't taken research methods here, and they're going to be somewhat different courses. They'll have similarities, but you've got a lot more exposure to context now, and presumably more expertise with statistics and those sorts of things. So you can do this course much more hands-on than maybe you did in SageUp. The other answer is I used to teach statistics, and in general, the kinds of tools that we use in research methods, statistics, analysis, all of those sorts of things, if you don't use it, you do in fact lose it. So, I taught a section of statistics that was intended for MBA students who wanted to do a business analytics concentration, and so they were expected to have taken a previous statistics course. So all of them did, and all of them opted into this, but many of them had forgotten a lot of basics. So it's worthwhile to keep that in mind. It can be you've probably forgotten a lot more than you expect, which is one of the reasons why this course tends to be somewhat difficult. We're going to try to take it, gently this semester, but it is a difficult course, and so we're going to try to take care of you, to answer questions, guide you through things. But it's stuff that people are not used to doing. So that's part of why you need to do it again. The more times you practice it, the more likely you will remember. Our objectives for today is just to take a little course summary, the goals, content, discuss a little bit about evaluation and some ground rules. But that's about it. And in general objectives, and I'm going to post all the slides this semester, just because why not? So you'll have everything you need to prepare for the class. In Management 420, the required readings are going to be in a folder on Moodle, and so we're going to generally take a concept-based approach, a case-based approach. So you're going to see how, by reading summaries, summaries of research, and so you'll learn how it's done. And evaluation is going to be different this semester than it has been in the past. So the details are going to be, you'll find them in the course syllabus, but basically you're going to see that we're going to have assignments, and we're going to have a final project and a final exam. And that's about the size of it. Oh darn. We're going to just skip through this really quickly. Don't pay attention to it. I forgot to update it, and I forgot it was even in these slides. So sorry about that. Anyway, so in general, management research does sometimes make the news. You might want to pay attention to that. Shorter working hours mean happier and more productive employees. It's often very cold in offices, but employees do better when they're a little bit warm. Paper documents. This still appears to be true, although with more as digital natives continue to pour into workplaces, this may change. But in general, people retain information better on paper. And that's why I'm not going to have, in general, I've never had any kind of strong policy on whether people were using computers to take their notes in this class. I mean, obviously, you're going to be taking this class via your computer or tablet or something along those lines this semester. So, but it might be a good idea in general. It's a good idea to have pencil and paper or pen and paper and to take notes by hand. And it really does seem to, like all of the evidence in educational psychology, shows that people retain information better when they write it down by hand. Mindsets matter. If you believe your work is healthy, you'll be healthier. People who are generous and altruistic are more successful in business than people who are self-centered or greedy. Adam Grant has written a book on this called Givers and Takers. I recommend reading it. It's not bad. So let's just talk about something like in general. Several workplaces, well, especially universities, have implemented something like pet therapy at the end of terms. Like for instance, this was something that we did here, several years ago. At this point, do exams have you stressed out? Petting a friendly dog will help, and so we want to think about how this works. So we're just going to quickly step through this. The research question here is, does pet therapy really work? And what do we mean by that? What do we mean by work? Now, in this case, well, the question that's phrased here is it stress? Are you stressed out? So the question here is when we say pet therapy, does pet therapy really work? We have to answer the question by operationalizing this. We have to say, what does it mean to work? Well, this idea here, like we would probably most easily operationalize this by saying measuring your stress before and after petting this friendly dog, right? To see, does it decrease your stress? But we might have broader questions than that, like, does it improve your performance in exams? That's plausible. It's possible even, because people who are stressed out may not study as well as people who have reduced their stress. So it's possible that there may be this sort of spillover where interacting with these friendly animals will help you to reduce your stress in a way that facilitates your performance even. So we can answer, like, again, like this research questions tend to be broad. And then by narrowing down to create a specific study, we have to make some choices in terms of this. Like if we just measured people at the end, like say after people came in for petting these friendly dogs, just measured their stress, we'd have no idea if they had increased stress, decreased stress, not changed their stress at all. We might choose poorer answers, like maybe it makes them feel happy, even if it doesn't affect their stress. So if we measure happiness, they might come out happy on average, but not actually be any less stressed than when they came in. And also, it could be a temporary effect. Like all of these questions, like we have all of these questions, it will affect our design of the study. So this is a diagram that we'll go through many, many times. So in general, in fact, it organizes the course in a lot of ways. So right now, today, we're talking about identifying the management or organizational problem. Like, what is it that drives us? And we're going to especially focus on this next, well, in week 2, build a proposed explanation with support from relevant literature and develop our hypotheses. Then we choose a research design, whether this is going to be an experiment or field study, a survey, whether we're going to measure everything at the same time, i.e. cross-sectionally or over time, longitudinally. We're going to plan measures and data collection. Are we going to use self-reported questionnaires? Are we going to interview people? Are we going to observe them at work? Questions about sampling. Are we going to sample randomly within an organization? Are we going to take a random sample of organizations? How are we going to get people in? And also focus on the ethics of data collection. Ethics are very, very, very important in research. If you're not, I mean, it's a way to fairly effectively invalidate your research simply by doing things unethically. And then we'll analyze the data, whether it's a quantitative or qualitative analysis, whether we're going to find support for or against our research hypotheses. This is sort of just a symptom of the ways that we teach this course in the past, that we talk about accepting and rejecting hypotheses, but that's probably not the best way to think about it. What we should really be thinking about is in terms of whether or not the data support the hypothesis or fail to support the hypothesis. So that would be, the first would be accept, the latter would be like reject. We'll talk more about this as we get into hypothesis testing later on in the semester. And then finally, where this all comes together, like course is really built around a capstone, right? That you are going to write a report on real data that you have personally analyzed. So you're going to write a report. We're going to prepare a presentation, well, in general, those are things that do happen. There's not going to be a presentation in this course, but a lot of times you will, even if you write a report, you will also wind up preparing a presentation, a slide deck to present to the managers or executives who need to know the key points from your study. You'll make recommendations, both for practicing managers and for future researchers. And so this is kind of the way it's going to be organized throughout this semester. So you see that we're going to be talking throughout the course. Right now we're focused on identifying the problem, then building proposed solutions, then choosing research design. So that's how we do actually design. So that's the first step in designing the study. We'll be covering that multiple times throughout the semester. We're going to plan measures and our data collection. All of those sorts of things are going to come into play in the second week, and then again throughout the semester. We're going to analyze data, which we're going to start about the middle, well, just before the middle of the semester, and we'll do various things throughout the semester. We're going to write, and then the capstone for this course is writing your actual report, which is going to be the culmination of the class activities. And so anyway, research methods tends to be evidence-based thinking, and then leads to decision making. So, oh boy, you know what? We're going to go through this somewhat quickly. Like basically the idea that there are lots and lots of different sorts of workspaces that people could have, and is your actual workspace better or worse than you might expect, and what influence does that have on your attitudes and performance? This is going to be one of the papers that I refer back to from the readings. Probably most frequently, this is work by Jerry Greenberg. That's based in a pretty well-founded theory of motivation and job attitudes called equity theory, and it is a fascinating field study. So the management problem that's identified here is, what is the ideal workspace to ensure job satisfaction and productivity? The literature on equity theory provides an explanation that the reward should equal the contribution to the organization. So your workspace should be sort of commensurate with your contribution. Greenberg chose a longitudinal experiment in an insurance field firm. So this was a longitudinal experiment that was conducted in situ. So this was a field experiment. Measures in data collection, they observed performance in a sample of 198 employees, and then also used a questionnaire measure of job satisfaction. They also found support for the main hypothesis that improving work environments beyond workers' expectations boosts satisfaction and performance. There's some caveats to that we'll talk about as we go into a lot of detail on this study, and the managerial implications. So they affect office design, decisions, and the future recommendations are about longer-term research study. So what we'll see with this study. What we see with this study is that what happened is people were either assigned to they were renovating the offices, and so some people stayed in their own offices as like a true control group. Some people were assigned to equivalent offices, so new offices, but they were equivalent in scope, in sort of status to their current offices. So that's sort of another control group to kind of rule out that it isn't just keeping your office, it's the status, like kind of the quality or status of the office. Then they also had ones where we had people were assigned to a better office than their current one and a much better office than their current one, and then people were assigned to a worse office and a much worse office. And so they looked at performance in 2-week increments across this span. So 2 weeks before the reassignment, 2 weeks during reassignment, and 2 weeks after reassignment. And what they found was that basically, performance bounces around, that people who were in their own offices or equivalent ones, their performance stayed about the same. People who were assigned to better offices and much better offices, their performance improved People who were assigned to worse and much worse offices, their performance got worse. But the interesting thing is that that's inside 2 weeks, people declined back down to baseline in the better and much better offices, approximately, whereas people stayed somewhat low in the worse and much worse offices. And again, this is just an illustration. I will probably in the key sites that I'm going to post from this week, there'll be a picture of the actual data analysis. So in general, as we do live interactive events, we'll get to know each other a bit better. But there's not really a lot to talk about here this week. This is just to kind of give you a feel for what's going on with this course. I'm also going to provide a link to another video that just reviews basic statistics. That's not required at all, but it might be a good idea just so that you're familiar with the terminology. Just a quick review. We'll cover in depth most of the concepts later on in the semester as we work on analyzing data and things like that. But just as a first step, it can be useful to go over a couple of the things that we will use regularly. So that's all I have to say for this week. And then I will also be, like I said, I'll be posting videos usually ahead of course, or ahead of the class time. I'm going to try to be doing those on Mondays from now on, but we've had some complications with my kids' health this week, so I got, or over the last week, so that slowed me down a little bit, but hopefully we'll be back to normal next week. All right, thank you so much. Have a good day, and I'll see you soon.